Hi, Luca. How are you?
Hello. Yes, all good. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, really excited to be on your podcast.
Yeah, excellent. Did you ever do it before? I can't remember. Actually, I should have looked up
I
the previous ones.
no, this is first time on the podcast. So yeah, please go easy on me. Only nice questions.
And as if by magic, I'm sitting here in the shack, as folk can see. It wouldn't be the ShackCast without the shack. The rain has just started outside. I've got an open window because it's been nice, but the rain is starting to team down in Edinburgh here. So,
Yes,
typical.
and we are in Manchester where it always rains. So I don't even have any windows in the room I'm currently in, but I would hazard a guess it's raining right now.
Yeah, well, that's Manchester and Scotland for you. And you said your fire alarm might go off, so hopefully it doesn't go off. And if it does go off, you
Yes,
don't have to. It's just a drill. Um,
it is.
Look, yeah, I've known you for some years, and what I wanted to do today is kind of just have that general chat in these podcasts about technology in the sector, what we're seeing, what the trends are. We'll have a chat for 10, 15 minutes, and then maybe just finish up round the three wishes that I'm going to ask every guest. So if you could think of your three wishes for the sector. It's absolutely teeming it down here. I'm going to be floating away in my shack any second now. But listen, I have to start with, I was just about to write a post. I was speaking to somebody earlier in the day, and yeah, hopefully you'll make me feel a bit rejuvenated, because the person said, Dave, you're one of the old guard, you've been about forever. And I felt really old, and I'm like, oh, for God's sake. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think it must be a good thing.
Yeah,
But
it's definitely a good thing. People want the experience, don't they? And I think it's fair to say the sector looks to you and some other, shall we say, experienced people for that steer. So
old
I think you take it
farts.
as a compliment.
Yeah, us old farts. But listen, on that subject of being about for a while, I mean, and you've been doing this for a little while as well in housing, Luca. So one of the things I always look at is looking forward as technology is concerned, and we'll cover that in a minute or two. Um, but what have you seen over the last year or two around trends, if anything? And we haven't scripted this, so if you need a minute to think about it, we can go into a different subject. But basically, what I'm always looking at is what's been happening. How can we learn from it? Is it a trend that's going to continue? So what have you seen, Luca? I mean, have you seen anything specific?
Yeah, I think trend wise, certainly in the with the regulator and everything else that's gone on, I think there's a much bigger emphasis, and rightly so, but a much bigger emphasis on feedback from tenants, on what tenants want, how they
Yeah,
find services, how they want to live in their homes, and how they even want to interact with
yeah,
their housing organisations, and that is a good thing. And we've seen that through the regulator. We've seen that in England with TSMs, and Scotland and Wales have similar uh,
yeah.
representations.
That's right.
Um, I'd say that's one of the big things for me that I've noticed, and there's a lot more tenant participation, even for us as suppliers. You're engaging more with tenants, and maybe even part of that procurement process as well, which is a good thing to get them involved and engaged and excited about change within their organisation. And then obviously the other big trend technology wise, and it's definitely a buzzword, but is AI. You're seeing a lot more
Yeah.
providers in the sector who are providing AI platforms around repairs, around analytics, around scheduling. That's the real buzzword within the sector, and that's certainly what a lot of people are talking about, and certainly what we're talking about as well.
Well, let's take the first one, for example, on tenants and tenant satisfaction and the focusing on the tenant. At the end of the day, that's what matters, right? Is the tenant's ability to know they're in a warm, safe environment.
Yeah,
They're being looked after. If things break, they get fixed. If there's antisocial behaviour happening near or around them or affecting them individually,
yeah,
separately, it's being tackled. If they're hitting problems with rent, and we can't avoid the fact that there's still a cost of living crisis, and there probably will be for years to come. So
mm,
I think one of the things that we need to keep. I mean, it's interesting actually, because I had this discussion with someone a few months back where they said, and I agree. I remember a time talking about being doing this long enough, where it was always about. Hopefully, you don't hear that sound. It's like hailstones now. This is ridiculous. Can you
I
hear
can't
that?
hear
Come
anything.
on,
No,
well, that's
no,
brilliant.
no. You're all good.
The computer, the system, I think, is muffling out that sound. The point being is that I remember a time when it was all about the asset, the stock, the
Yeah,
property, and
yeah.
then the tenant was just somebody that happened to live in that asset.
Mm,
And that's the way it is. But now there's things like customer voice, TSM measurements, scrutiny. There, as you said, Luca, the regulator is getting a lot tougher. I know of a number of councils and landlords are getting inspected and downgraded quite significantly because of things
yeah.
like, and this is where it links into the type of things we do on a day-to-day basis, is look at solutions around technology.
Mm,
I see, I don't know, I'd love to hear what you say about this, but I see landlords really still struggle with the concept of being on top of their data.
yeah.
When it comes to maybe rent information, when it comes to stock information specifically, and that's when they've been downgraded. Do you see that as
Mm.
well in the interactions you have with your customers at VoiceScape?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, data's always a big thing for technology, and I think if I had a pound for every time an organization said that their data wasn't in a good place or needed to be worked on or was a risk for them as an organization, I think I wouldn't need to be here on your podcast. And I think organizations are, and again, the regulator has a big part to play in this, and
Yeah,
gradings have a big part to play in that, but they're waking up to that, and that's why you're seeing more consultancy organizations supporting housing associations and local authorities. But I think just going back to the tenant thing, around there being more tenant participation, I even think even in ways the services are delivered is a lot more focused on individual tenants. I think in the past, an organization might buy a piece of software, they might buy some technology, and it delivers something in a very specific way, regardless of how maybe certain individuals would engage or want to use that piece of technology. Whereas I think now there's a much bigger focus on delivering technology or delivering services in a way that does represent or does benefit individual tenants in the way that they like to engage with their housing association and in the way they like to respond to things. And of course, that is the great thing about that. The payoff for that is that the organization gets more participation from tenants. They get more feedback from tenants. They understand their tenants more, and then they get to shape their services because of that. So it's definitely a trend in the sector that we're seeing, and it's definitely a good thing. I don't think anybody would argue it's not a good thing, but it's definitely an exciting thing to be sort of watching play out for sure.
I totally agree. I think we can never lose focus on the fact that it's the tenant is the reason we do it. It's the tenant at the end of the day through their rents that pay the majority of the income that a housing association would see. So not only do we have to respect that, we have to respect that they're human beings with lives. And some people get not frustrated with me, but surprised sometimes when I say the best thing you can hear from a tenant is nothing. If they're satisfied and you're just delivering a service, then that's good. And then, so we put a lot of focus on talking to the tenants, but sometimes tenants just don't want to be talked to. They're just happy with the house they're in, the flat they're in. They're happy, they pay their rent, or if, and they just get on with their life. They have a job, or if they're employed, they're trying to find jobs, etc. And we know there's a challenge out there. So I think it's important that we focus in on that. But data, as we said, is incredibly important. One of the things that I think is important to mention in these podcasts that we're doing with Triple Value Impact as well is the digital blueprint. And VoiceScape are obviously a partner in that with a number of solutions. And what I think is really important in the discussion we've just had is the ability to be able to, when you and I are working with landlords, that we can evidence the business case, ROIs, how it can improve tenant satisfaction, how it can make a landlord manage better income collection rates, etc. I'm trying to think of the right words here. You're better at it than I am. But how you can make landlords more efficient and how they can help tenants pay their rent better more effectively, how they can look at different areas around TSMs and so on. So one of the other things I wanted to kind of talk about today, Luca, was the whole, and I'm working with a couple of landlords on this one, and I know it's of great interest to a number of people in the sector, And just yesterday, the day before yesterday, what's this? Yeah, it was Tuesday, I think it was. I was speaking to somebody that was very senior in a big housing management system supplier, and they said it was getting very frustrating in there because they're losing out business left, right, and centre to companies that provide what I call best of breed solutions, the type of thing that VoiceScape and others in the sector provide. Really good pieces of software. You mentioned AI, we'll cover that in a second. That do really important things really, really well, and we can evidence that makes a difference. Do you see, I mean, and these landlords I'm working with are keen to decouple their reliance of the big HMS supplier and go to best of breed micro solutions, of which is that something you're seeing as well? Are you seeing people say, we're fed up with our housing management system with VoiceScape, what can you do about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think, we've had, many years of big systems doing or trying to do absolutely everything for the housing organisation and the local authority. And actually what you sort of get then is sort of lots of little bits from them. So like they do a little bit of customer satisfaction, they do a little bit of arrears management, they do a little bit of repairs management, etc. And actually housing associations, they might be able to get by, it might work for them, but I think when you look at housing associations now where they are being more innovative, where they're being, we want them to be less risk averse, we want them to try new things, and I think sometimes those organizations are less inclined to really invest in those areas because they want to be doing lots of everything else as well. And I think the beauty of instead, and what we're seeing with organizations now, the beauty of going to those best of breeds is that often you find they're more engaging, they're more versatile, they're more willing to develop within that singular space, whether it be arrears management, whether it be scheduling or repairs or anything like that, because that's what they are obsessed with. That's what they
that's why
that's
what
they wake up in the night thinking about. That's what they're really passionate about, and therefore you tend to get better solutions because of it, because they're not having to worry about assets if they're doing arrears, they're not having to worry about scheduling, they're not having to worry about the other side of things, the things that maybe housing management systems do really well. So you get those with those best of breed providers, you get a much more feature rich and therefore a really good demonstratable ROI or success coming out the other end. And I think that's really important for housing associations, especially when we're asking them, or the sector, especially when we're asking them to be more innovative, to maybe take a few more risks, is that, when we're asking them to do that, that we can still demonstrate that there's a payoff, or that there is a benefit to this, and it does work, and it is working. I think that's very important.
Yeah, and I think you summed that up nicely. One of the things I'm talking about next week, I'm hosting the Social Housing Roundtable on the 16th, and it's so everyone, if you're listening, then please register for it. But the topic of the day, and I'm joined by Rob Griffiths of Cody Group, and Rob and I will be talking about are we as efficient as a landlord as we can be. And is technology the answer? I believe technology is the answer, and I think it links back to exactly what you said. These best of breed solution providers like yourselves, that's what you do. You do it and you invest in that, and that's. But I think it's easier, I've found, to work out the ROI, or let's just call it the business case, the financial calculations, by deploying a VoiceScape solution. Here's how much it costs. Here's how much you get back by the efficiency gains. And yeah, let's talk about AI for a minute or two. I mean, that's why AI is going to be so important to us as a sector, because it's going to allow landlords to effectively predict, to effectively find the answers in the data, albeit that we going back to the data is incredibly important. If the data's rubbish, then the AI modeling's not going to work.
Yeah.
So I believe that on that subject of AI, it's something that's close to my heart. I'm not talking about the kind of chat GPT, ask it a question, it gives you an answer. I'm talking about the machine learning. I'm talking about the predictive analytics, the algorithms out there that I know you guys are using. I mean,
Yeah.
what do you, is it, because I don't tend to talk to kind of landlords too much about AI at this moment in time. Other many folk, and maybe you do as well, will talk about that. Is there still a case of that, oh, I'm not so sure about that? Or are people starting to come around to it?
I think largely organizations are coming around to it. And I think, with any new thing in the sector, there's always that, dipping our toe in, seeing what other organizations are doing and seeing what they're doing, and maybe we'll follow suit. But I think, AI's been around now for a couple of years, certainly within the sector. And I think, largely speaking, people are coming around to the idea. I still, some organizations are more ambitious and
Yeah,
running with it a lot faster than other organizations, and sometimes I think that depends on the size of the organization. I think solution providers have a role to play within that as well. I think you've got some solution providers who have gone all in on AI and see the value of it and make it a part of their solution, and there's huge benefits to that. Whereas I think there are other solution providers out there that are almost feeding into the reservations that some
yeah,
in the sector might have with AI, and sort of like also, it sounds silly, but sort of trying to be edgy in that way, trying to be
I
different.
get
Like
it.
we're not one of those organizations that are, just saying buzzwords around AI. We actually recognize that you might be reserved about it, and
Yeah,
therefore we're going to be reserved about it. But in my opinion, I don't think that helps, because I think, take away the word AI, really what an organization should be asking is this thing, this technology, this solution, this service, can it solve a problem for us? And it might be a problem we don't even know we have yet, but can it solve that problem? And is it demonstratable on the other side? So is there
that's it. That's exactly
data
it.
or metrics around it? And actually, whether it's AI or some other buzzword is sort of irrelevant. Does it achieve what we want it to achieve, and is that demonstratable? I think those are the main questions that organizations need to be
Yeah,
asking, and they sort of don't need to get hung up around what it is. Is it AI, or is it machine learning, or is it data analytics? What
yeah,
we want
I
to be
get it.
asking ourselves is, what is it we're trying to achieve?
That's it. And to me, I look at it simply as another tool. Like we've had
Mm,
over the years, different types of technologies have been applied. I think this is the AI discussion has been swept up in a whole discussion of ethics. But to
yeah,
me, you can push that aside because most of the AI that's involved in the sector at the moment is sitting within solutions that companies like you guys provide. And you use AI to be able to improve your software and then going full circle again, to go back to that whole point about how it benefits the tenants. So good. Luca, one of the things I'm trying my best to keep these to 15, 20 minutes discussions because I think people probably get fed up after that amount of time listening to us. No
yeah,
disrespect to you or I, but
no,
people have good jobs to get on with, and the short, sharp bites we
they
can
do.
have in these things, the better. So, three wishes. What's your first wish for the sector?
Well, I actually sort of think we've already touched on it,
Okay.
but just because I think it's very topical. But I think the first wish, definitely collaboration more from a supplier perspective. So more suppliers, technology providers collaborating with each other. I think I wish for more of that.
Right.
I think I've spoken to housing associations out there, who have almost been stopped in their tracks for doing something because a system they already have either can't integrate with it or won't integrate with it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, well, that's very disruptive, I think, to organizations' goals, but also to where the sector's going. I think suppliers need to be more open,
Okay.
where appropriate and where necessary. They need,
I agree. That's a
collaborate
good
more,
one. It's a good one.
for sure.
Okay.
And that's just feedback I'm having with housing people. So that's not even experience within VoiceScape that where I work. That's
Okay. That's
feedback
generally,
from housing associations and
that's a great one.
staff there. Um, Obviously, next wish, be bolder. So,
Right.
we've touched on it already. Try more things, be open to new ways of doing things. Don't just carry on with the status quo or whatever you've been doing because it's been working for you. And it's almost like that unconscious incompetence. You sort of don't know what you're missing out on yet. You don't know what you might need help with, and therefore have more dialogue with those suppliers. I think sometimes, certainly in my world, organizations, housing associations are reluctant to speak to people like myself because they just think you're trying to sell them something or peddling something.
It's difficult,
and that in some cases that's true. I'm not going to hide away from it, but sometimes it's just about knowing what else is out there. And I think there are lots of housing associations that are missing out on features or systems that they're not even aware of because they're always just doing what they're doing. And that leads me nicely onto my third wish, which is never take the easy option. And this is maybe more pointed to a procurement perspective, but I've had loads of experience where services have just been renewed or they've just carried on with their existing provider because it's the easy thing to do. They don't have to do a procurement exercise. They don't have to go out to tender. It takes a lot of time to explore the market. And I think that's where really nicely the blueprint comes in, because it cuts through that noise and it gives you that ability to see those best of breed solutions in the sector. So procurement teams especially need to be more involved in the blueprint and things like that. But I think, don't just do what you've always done, because you'll get what you've always got. And I know that sounds very cheesy, but it's absolutely true.
That last one's brilliant. In fact, all three of the wishes are really, really good. I totally agree with you. Like, be bolder, stop trialing things and delve in, but do it in a calculated manner. And as you said, the blueprint does that. It provides the business case for you. It's not like, try this piece of software from VoiceScape. It's really good, and it will help you. That's what has happened in the past. Literally, people have bought it after a demo at a conference, and they go, "That's really good." And then they work out, going back to one of your other points about why some people then a few years down the line say, "I'm not really happy with this software." That's because they've not implemented it well, or because they've not listened and had dialogue. Dialogue, you had the conversation with the supplier to say, "Did you realize you can do this? Did you realize you can do that?" Buying, procuring, implementing, and using software isn't enough. You need to continuously improve it. And SIP is the old words, continuous improvement plan around your software and your usage and your processes. Luca, that was really good.
And also, sorry, just
lastly, we're still going. Excellent.
And I think acting like that, organizations who are constantly reviewing and changing and looking at the market hold suppliers like us to account, because it constantly makes you have to continuously improve your services or your solutions. Constantly ask the question, am I still providing value to this housing association? Am I still achieving what they need to achieve? Can I even add more so that they stay with you, or that they continue on that relationship with you? And I think when you have associations who are just renewing contracts or just carrying on with the way that they're doing it, you almost get a supplier. And this isn't always the case, of course, because there are loads of really brilliant, innovative companies out there constantly progressing. But I think, and maybe the housing management systems, some housing management systems could be under this category, but you get organizations that just slow down and they stop developing their product. Because if I'm just going to get a renewal every 3 years or every 2 years, and that investment's just going to keep coming in, and I just get to keep providing what I've always provided, there's no reason for me as a company to continuously innovate, because I'm still getting the same input from the customer.
You're preaching to the converted, but hopefully our audience, when they listen to this, will think, yeah, that's right, I've got to have more dialogue, I've got to have that discussion, I've got to be bolder. Luca, that was brilliant. Thank you very much. We'll get that out on the ether, hopefully in a few hours' time today. So perfect. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Your time. No worries, mate.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.